Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome to today's video. This episode will guide you through the issues of the Uncanny X-Men published by Marvel Comics in 1983. Issue 174. The vastness of space. They say it's an overwhelming experience to behold. Being able to see an Earthrise with your own eyes for the first time in your life is something Madelyne Pryor is now experiencing. She's joined Scott Summers, also known as Cyclops, the former leader of the X-Men aboard the Starjammer, a spacecraft belonging to his father Corsair and his band of intergalactic outlaws, also known as the Starjammers. Scott and Madelyne have become romantically involved over the past couple of weeks. Scott, though hesitant at first, has given in to his feelings and decided to not hold back, regardless of Madelyne's looks, who looks just like his deceased lover Jean Grey. While they are kissing, they get interrupted by Scott's father and Mamselle Hepzibah, who are also a couple. They're making fun of the whole situation, and Madelyne tells them that even as a pilot, fantasizing about flying through space, she never imagined she would actually experience it. Scott ends up talking to Hepzibah about their partners, as Corsair takes Madelyne on a tour through the ship. Hepzibah noticed some hesitation in Scott's voice and asks him if he would die for her, just like his father had for Hepzibah. Scott's confused about this, since Corsair is still alive and well, but Hepzibah tells him that his father came close to dying when he saved her a long time ago. After a short walk, Corsair introduces Scott, and Madelyne specifically, to the members of his band of outlawed space pirates. He tells them both that they have a new member, namely Binary. Scott starts talking to Carol about her confrontation on Earth with the X-Men and their newest member Rogue, and about her joining the Starjammers in their spacefaring adventures. She tells him that there's no place left for her on Earth, since there's no one there that she truly cares for, having lost all her emotional bonds to the people of her past due to Rogue's attack on her. She says she was reborn as Binary in space, and that's where her new home will be, right here among the stars. Scott asks his dad when they will leave, and Corsair tells him it will be soon. He asks Scott if he still wants to come along, as they've talked about it before, and he tells him that he has no idea when and if they will ever return. Scott takes a look at Madelyne and tells his father that he doesn't know. Over in the infirmary of the ship, the dethroned Empress of the Shi'ar Empire Lilandra and her lover Charles Xavier, Professor X of the X-Men, are having a conversation. Over the past months, Xavier has received a newly cloned body, since his previous body had been a host for a brood egg. This new body of his is showing some peculiar issues, namely psychosomatic ones. Whereas the legs of his previous body had been crushed years ago and he had not been able to walk ever since, this body should have perfectly healthy legs. Yet for some reason, he's still experiencing excruciating pains whenever he tries to walk. Pains which he should not have. The Lilandra's examinations point out that the symptoms are coming from physical origins, and not mental ones. There should be a solution to these issues. But she tells Charles that, sadly enough, she will not be around for that when it happens. Charles asks her what's wrong, and she tells him that she's received information that her sister Deathbird, who seized the throne from her, is mad and ruling the Empire in a bad way. Civil war seems to be inevitable and she can't desert her people. She has to return to the Shi'ar Empire and lead the rebellion against her sister. Lilandra asks Charles to come with her, and he asks her to stay. But she can't. She says that as much as it breaks her heart, she will have to leave. They both have responsibilities to their own people. Charles to the X-Men and the New Mutants, and Lilandra to her fellow Shi'ar. They also discuss Scott's worries, and Madelyne's resemblance of Jean Grey. Lilandra had nearly killed Madelyne at first glance, since she immediately mistook her for being the resurrected Phoenix, one of the deadliest threats the universe has ever known. She asks Charles if he has scanned Madelyne's mind, but he tells her mind is closed off for him, which happens with some individual. Scott's thoughts, however, radiate with worries, and love for the woman. Charles wonders if a love that Scott and Jean had could have somehow triggered the Phoenix Force to resurrect herself in the form of Madelyne Pryor. He asks Lilandra what death even is to a universal creature such as the Phoenix. He also tells her that the physical likeness between the two women could be purely coincidental, and that they could all very well be overreacting to that coincidence due to their own fears and fantasies. They both hope that the latter is the case, because they both feel that Scott, after all he's been through, deserves the happiness which Madelyne has brought him, just as the two of them themselves deserve their own happiness. Scott himself is currently staring deep into space, probably even deeper lost in thought, thinking about his feelings for Madelyne and also about his worries, convinced that the chemistry between them is very real, yet there are so many eerie coincidences that get no resolve, not even when he asks Madelyne about it more directly. Somehow she tends to change the subject whenever he asks her something about the missing link. Those missing links keep gnawing at his mind. He knows he should just give it a rest and simply accept what is, as it feels as if he keeps trying to destroy what they have. In the meantime, Madelyne has joined him, asking him what's on his mind. He tells her he has been thinking about her, so she asks him why he looks so sad then. She asks him if he's been talking to ghosts, and she tells him that she sometimes does it herself. She can't really help herself when doing so. It's because of the guilt she feels towards the casualties of the plane crash she walked away from as a sole survivor. Even though it wasn't her fault, she can't help but blame herself. She tries to explain and apologize to the people that died back then. She can't forget what happened, but she knows she also can't let her control and ruin her life. And the same goes for Scott and the ghost of Jean that's been keeping his mind occupied. She somewhat jokingly tells Scott it's not really a fair romantic rivalry, and Scott tells her it's not even a rivalry at all. Madelyne then tells Scott to not hold back on his decision to join his father Corsair on his space travels on her account, and Scott then asks her to come with them. We then return to northern Japan, to the ancestral seat of the Yoshida clan. There's an explosion at the gate and Wolverine comes barging through, holding the honor sword of the clan, yelling out for Mariko. He gets told by the guards to leave because he's not welcome here, or he will suffer the consequences. Wolverine is headstrong and tells the guards to make him leave. Mariko steps up and, as the lord of the Yoshida clan, commands everyone to lay down their weapons. She says she will not have any blood get shed in her house, and Wolverine tells her that it remains to be seen. Wolverine wants an explanation as to why Mariko called off the wedding in the middle of the ceremony, after she had sworn she loved him with all her heart. She tells him she already told him back then, he is simply not worthy, but Wolverine is not having that as an explanation. She then tells him that's the only explanation he deserves, as she calls him the murderer of her father. Wolverine asks her if she sees and remembers the sword he's holding, about what the sword is and means to the clan, and he reminds her how he got to wield it in the first place. He tells her that if he's not worthy of her, he isn't worthy of wielding the sword either, as he hurls the sword in the ground between the two of them. Mariko then tells her half-brother the Silver Samurai to go and take the sword and return it to its proper resting place, the one guy Wolverine had just fought to near death, when the samurai and his accomplice tried to kill Mariko, just a couple of weeks before. As he draws the sword out of the ground, Harada tells Wolverine how he's won. His past crimes are forgiven and Mariko has named him the heir to the family clan. And Wolverine has lost everything. He has nothing, and tells him that he is nothing. Mariko delivers the final step to Wolverine by looking him in the eye and telling him that her love is for a man, not for a beast dressed up as a man. She tells him to leave her side, her house and her land. Forever. Back in New York, at the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, Kitty is reading a comic in her room, taking a break from her studies and playing with her newfound friend, the alien dragon she has named Lockheed. Lockheed starts nibbling on her hair as she tells him she's going to have to show the story to Piotr, who she likes a lot. She thinks Lockheed is a little bit jealous, and tells him that he will have to accept the fact that she has more than one friend. She faces through the door of her room and makes her way to Piotr's. She knocks on her teammate's door, but he says to go away because he's busy painting at the moment. She still opens the door and he says he should have just locked the door, but Kitty reminds him that that would not make any difference. She mocks him a bit for being grumpy while painting, which he says makes him relax. He tells her that only happens when it's not working out. He can't seem to translate what he sees in his mind on the canvas and it's frustrating him. Kitty thinks he needs a break, whereas Piotr just wants to be left alone. Or so he says. Kitty drags him along outside of his room, and when he asks her where they're going, she tells him they're going upstairs to Aurora's attic. Even though she wanted to show him the comic initially, she has now something more important to tell him. He asks what could be so important, but she says she can't tell him yet, because that would spoil the surprise. Piotr is somewhat hesitant to follow her, because he does not know what's in store for her. She tells him to close his eyes and he keeps joking around, But when he finally does keep his eyes closed, she looks at him and thinks to herself what an idiot he is. She then yells out surprise and jumps in his arms, giving him a kiss full on the lips. Pyotr is shocked, starts to blush, loses his balance and bumps into the wall behind him. When Kitty makes fun of him and points out that he's blushing, he tells her he's angry. She says he shouldn't be and that this was an intentional but a spur of the moment thing. While he's still holding Kitty, she tells him that this was not the real surprise, as she lays her hand across his eyes and tells him to not get too excited, nor to drop her and to start walking slowly. What Pyotr doesn't know is that she's using her phasing powers in an experimental way, namely trying to extend it to the person she's in contact with, and it seems to be working. Pyotr is now walking on the air as she would normally do herself, and she's facing the two of them through the floor of Aurora's attic. Pyotr asks her if they are at the end of the hall yet while still keeping his eyes closed, and Kitty tells him to hush. She tells him to be quiet and not to worry and to just keep on walking. She tells him to trust her and Pyotr thinks to himself he'd better take a quick look. To his surprise, he's walking on the air and Kitty loses her concentration, making them both fall on the floor. Kitty ends on top of Pyotr and he asks how she was able to do that. She tells him she's been experimenting with the powers under the guidance of Professor Xavier in the danger room, trying to determine the extent of her phasing powers. He tells her he's surprised and also very proud of her. She tells him she's very impressive, and Pyotr confirms this, quickly trying to change the subject, telling her they should water the plants in the attic, because that's what they came here for. She tells him that can wait, and he tells her that she looks scared. She says she is, but she doesn't care, as they share an intense moment, getting really close. Outside, Aurora arrives, and she can see there are visitors in her attic. When she lowers herself down inside, she sees Kitty and Pyotr kissing. They are both shocked and surprised by her arrival, and Kitty asks what she's doing here, to which Aurora tells her that she actually lives here. Kitty says she's embarrassed and feels like phasing out of there, but Pyotr tells her that she can't do that. She explains to Aurora that they didn't expect her back this soon, and figured they'd take care of her plants. But when she actually takes a look around, she finally notices that the attic is pretty much empty. She asks Aurora what happened to all the plants, and Aurora responds by telling her that she's changed over the past couple of months and she has redecorated her living space to match that change. In a different part of the mansion, Kurt is tending to Rogue, who got hurt pretty badly in a fight with the Viper and the Silver Samurai in Japan. He tells her she's recovering well after getting continuously blasted by Viper's gun. He says she should be up and running about a week or two, but Rogue asks him what the point would be since none of them trust her. She figures Wolverine should have just let her die instead of saving her life with his own healing powers. Kurt tells her it was his choice, and if he had thought she deserved to die there and then, he would have let her, without any hesitation. He obviously felt she's worth saving, or he wouldn't have allowed her to use his powers to survive the ordeal. He tells her to allow herself a chance to prove him right in this. She asks if the room she's in used to be Jean Grey's room, and Kurt confirms this. She asks him who she was, and why they all act up when they talk about Scott's new girlfriend Madelyne, who apparently looks a lot like Jean. Kurt tells her how Jean was one of the founding members of the X-Men as Marvel Girl, and she later became a being of unimaginable power, the Phoenix. She once pretty much single-handedly saved the entire universe from extinction. She wielded the power of a god, and that power drove her mad. In a rampage, she destroyed the star system, killing around 5 billion inhabitants. And during a moment of clarity, she realized what she had done and what was happening to her, and she decided to put a stop to this evil side of her. And for the sake of all creation, she died. As he walks out of the room, he wonders to himself if that's where the story truly ended. He recalls how Jean became the host for the Phoenix Force when she basically died on one of the X-Men's missions, and then resurrected herself through that power. He wonders why it couldn't happen once more. Aurora had seen a giant firebird while in Tokyo, just moments before they all got introduced to Madelyne. Could this really be a coincidence, he thinks. He feels that if Madelyne is a Phoenix reborn, Scott and her deserve a second chance at happiness. And if it would come to another fight with the Phoenix, he even doubts if all of the X-Men would be able to stop her. He then suddenly realizes how alone he feels, and he wishes his girlfriend Amanda was here. He stares outside through the window, and he thinks to himself how he could use her laughter right now, just to cheer him up. That's when he notices a package had been waiting for him. It contains a small doll of a blonde-haired witch, with a note coming from Amanda, saying she knows that he'd prefer the real thing. Sometime later, Aboard a plane heading for Anchorage, Alaska, an emotional Madelyne is asking Scott if he has made his decision yet while she's flying the plane. He says he is still thinking about it. Regardless of him not having made up his mind whether he'll be joining his father in space, he did buy a ring for Madelyne, because he wanted to make clear how he feels for her. She says the feelings are entirely mutual, until death parts them, as she's shedding a tear of joy. Scott says that that's the idea, while he gets up from his co-pilot seat to check up on the passengers. He thinks to himself how he was positive he'd chicken out, but he managed to pull it off. He actually did it. He proposed to her and she accepted. He doesn't know the whole truth about her and figures he never might, but that does not matter. He loves her anyways. He informs the passengers that they will be landing soon, that they should be fastening their seatbelts and that their personal gear should be stowed away safe. An older man wearing the clothes of a priest tries to grab his attention as he picks up something from the floor of the plane. He tells Scott that he dropped something, and when Scott returns to him, it appears to be a picture. The priest compliments the lady on the picture, asking Scott if he's right in thinking that the woman on the picture is the pilot. Scott tells the man that it's not the same person, but someone who looks like her. It's actually a picture of Jean taken while she was on vacation in Greece, just before her transformation of becoming the Dark Phoenix. Scott thinks to himself that this picture is not his and wonders how it got here, and why now. The father asks Scott if he's alright because he suddenly went very pale, and Scott responds by saying that it's been a long trip and he's just tired. He excuses himself and returns to the cockpit. The priest smiles and rejoices in the fact that Scott was shocked to have this happen and thinks he'd better get used to it, because there's a lot more to come. When he returns to the cockpit, Madelyne asks him if he's alright, and Scott tells her it's something he ate which is making him feel weird. She asks him if he still wants to hang out tonight, and he says he sure does. It's a celebration he would not want to miss for the world. Later that evening, Madelyne is driving home from the market, wondering about the cause of Scott's mood shift. She could notice him withdrawing and shutting her out. She knows something is wrong, but he won't tell her. On the other hand, she thinks she knows all about having secrets and old habits die hard. She figures it's probably just nerves on both of the parts. She gets out of the car and takes another look at her ring. She's getting married soon and still can't believe it. She hopes Scott is ready and as good of a cook as he says he is, because she is hungry. As she makes her way in, she doesn't notice she's being spied on, by the same mysterious figure who was present in Japan a couple of days ago, when Wolverine's marriage to Mariko got cancelled. He lights up a cigarette and thinks to himself, Scott is quite ready alright, but not in the way that Madelyne thinks. A triumphantly malevolent laughter is following Madelyne up the stairs, but she does not hear it. She tells Scott, who's looking out of the window overlooking the city, that she's home. As she unpacks the groceries and jokes around, she can still feel Scott is being troubled. So she asks him what's troubling him and if anything happened to his dad or the X-Men. Scott tells her that it's nothing like that, but that he has been thinking. He wants her to answer a very important question, and Madelyne is still joking around, saying that they already played this scene this morning when he proposed to her and she said yes, as she lays her arm around his neck. But Scott tells her that he is serious. It's the question that's been bugging him. He can't get rid of the doubts and fears as hard as he tries, so he flat out asks her, because he has to know. Madelyne looks at him with wide eyes as he asks her, "Are you the reincarnation of Jean Grey? Are you Phoenix?" Madelyne then pulls her arms back in shock and punches him straight in the face, knocking his protective glasses right off him. He has to keep his eyes shut now until he found his glasses. He realizes the mistake he made with asking her this, how he has now insulted and hurt her. He pretty much told her that their love is a lie, and that he doesn't care for her, only for the ghost she represents, totally disregarding her feelings. He can't immediately feel his glasses within reach, so without wasting any more time he reaches in his pockets, taking out his emergency set of spare glasses. He puts them on quickly, before he opens his eyes and wrecks Madelyne's apartment, in the same way that he has just wrecked her life. He wants to find her to explain and apologize, but he doesn't even know how to do that, since he doesn't know why he even asked. The shock and realization has now entered his mind, doing away with all the doubts and fears he was just feeling minutes ago. He asks for Madelyne to please come and talk to him as he steps through her door, only to get blasted out again by flames, knocking him out, dropping him on the ground. And Madelyne steps out, telling him that the time for talk is over. Thanks for watching this video and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, because that will help me out in growing the channel and being able to produce more videos like this one. See you next episode.